Hi, this is day 92 of Trump 100. I'm Martha Kelner. Immigration is one of Donald Trump's flagship policies. It's been big news this week with the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia and the visit from the El Salvadorian president. President Trump will want an immigration crackdown to be something he can hold up as a win after 100 days of his presidency. So today I'm joined by Ron D Vitello. Ron, after working in Border Patrol for 3 decades, you served as Donald Trump's acting director of ICE. That's the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency for a year. After some time in the private sector, you've now been rehired by the administration as a senior advisor for the Department of Homeland Security. You're a busy man at the moment, I imagine, but what motivated you to get into this line of work?
Well, I was very interested as a younger man in law enforcement and was recruited out of college by the United States Border Patrol. So I entered on duty about the time I turned 21 and have stayed with it until my first retirement in 2019.
A tough border run and the biggest mass deportation operation in history were two cornerstones of Donald Trump's promises on the election trail. Immigration is an issue clearly that motivates a lot of the people who voted for him. Why do you think it is such a pull to the polling station? And how well is President Trump delivering on those promises that he made?
Well, I would say it's always in the mind of the public, or it has been in most of my career. I started this work as a young man in 1985, and so it's always part of campaigns. It may not be in the top 10 in every single case, but I think the reason that the president was successful this time around and in his first bid, in term one, was because he focused on this because he knew it meant, public safety. He knew it, that it got a lot of attention. It's in sometimes the wrong way. And then under the Biden administration, there was a real lack of awareness of when they tore down the policy prescriptions that were working in Trump one, how massive the response would be from the illegal activity to the drug smuggling, the deaths from fentanyl. And so the president, recognizing what he could do in this space, used it as a campaign, to attract people to his campaign. And then I would say that, since January 20th, he's succeeding on all fronts in regard to the policy prescriptions and most of the operations. More to do, but we are well on our way to securing the border in ways I've never seen in 35 years of being around this issue. And then the deportations of people who are in the country illegally and who also have committed crimes are up, they're off the charts. ICE is doing a fantastic job.
On the issue of mass deportations, Ron, I want to ask you about the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, which has preoccupied Washington and the world this week. We've been reporting every development in this case on Trump 100, and I feel like it's been kind of a litmus test as to how far this administration is willing to push the courts to carry out its deportation plans. And in fact, in some cases, how much they're willing to defy the courts to carry out these immigration plans. What have you made of Mr. Garcia's case?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to preface my remarks. I think what my interpretation of what the court did was say that the president has jurisdiction, if you will, has the authority to act in immigration systems and with regard to foreign policy. So the court solidified that. With this particular case, I think it's been overstated that he wasn't supposed to be deported or wasn't deportable. And then, if you go to the base case, if you will, is this somebody that's been in the country illegally, is a known gang member, was ordered by a judge to be deported. That appeal was also lost. Therefore, that person was sent to El Salvador. El Salvador accepted that work on behalf of the United States government. He is a citizen of Salvador. And so we're in a situation now where he's been sent back to where he belongs. And in the discussions this week in the White House, both presidents affirmed the fact that he's where he belongs to be, and there's no desire on either side to change that condition.
But the administration has admitted an error, hasn't it? An administrative error in sending him to El Salvador. That is the one place that he wasn't supposed to be deported to?
Yeah, so immigration law is very complicated, mostly because it involves human beings. As I understand it, he had due process. He is a deportable alien, so there's no scenario by which he stays in the United States. There was a withhold order from El Salvador with regard to gang activity and threats of gangs, which are really, that condition has changed in El Salvador in a dramatic way. Those gangs are not on the streets of San Salvador, and designating MS-13 as a foreign terrorist organization changes that legal construct as well. And so I think both countries have decided that the best way forward is to do what we're doing.
So the administration's saying they lack the power to bring Mr. Garcia back to the United States. Can that be true? You know, the US is paying El Salvador $6 million a year to take control of these deportees. You know, the president of El Salvador was in the Oval Office. Surely there is room for negotiation on his return.
Well, that's between the executives, and I will not speak for the president, but I would just say this. If there was an American in jail who did something in El Salvador and we wanted to extradite that person, or El Salvador wanted to extradite that person, there would be a court process in the United States to carry that out. But we wouldn't default in the United States with the president calling the other president and saying, send your native son back to a foreign country. We wouldn't do that. And I'm sure that El Salvador has similar feelings. They're just not going to do it because we ask.
So you really don't think that the El Salvador government, in receipt of $6 million a year of US money, would bend on this one case and send Mr. Garcia back?
Again, I don't know the contractual situation that we're in with El Salvador. That's not in my portfolio of work. But I
Mhm.
can tell you that we wouldn't send an American citizen to a foreign country just because they asked us to. And oh, by the way, if they sent him back, we're going to remove him again anyway. The government will remove him again. He's not legal to stay in the United States under the circumstance.
Ron, you rightly point out that immigration law is very complicated, and I'm sure as journalists we're learning a lot every day on how immigration law works. Does there though need to be some more transparency in how these men are being designated as gang members? You say he's part of this MS-13 gang. I know he was suspected of being affiliated with that gang in upstate New York. His lawyers say that he's never been to upstate New York. Does the public need to be in receipt of more of the so-called evidence that the government has that these men are part of these gangs?
100% if he was in a criminal trial being charged with a conspiracy to be a gang member, activity as a gang member, then you would put that information in front of a jury in a trial court. But what he went through was an administrative procedure to allow him to claim amnesty. He lost that contest and then he appealed it and lost it again. And so, under the terms of that administrative procedure, the government has to just implicate him in gang activity. And again, the lawyer who's an employee of the Justice Department, who we call an immigration judge, that's his official title, ruled that there was enough information for him to negate his ability to stay in the United States because of his gang affiliation. And even the judge that issued the withhold order did so on the basis of him being a gang member.
But he's been denied, hasn't he, Ron, the merest amount of due process, and he's now in one of the most dismal, high security prisons in the world without having been convicted of any crime, without having even been accused of committing any crime. It's a human rights violation, isn't it?
It is not. He did in fact have what is available to him under the administrative procedures in regards to his status as an illegal alien in the United States. He went through two hearings regarding his ability to stay or be in the United States, and he lost those contests with the government. And I think there's
But
more.
he was never convicted of a crime, and he's now in a
Yes, you're
prison
you're
designated for
absolutely right. He
terrorists.
he he does not have what we know as a criminal record, but it's not required for him to be removed from the United States for him to have a criminal record. He was removed from the United States because he was here illegally and had no status otherwise. And so if we took away all of the affiliation with gangs, if we took all the affiliation with his criminal activity but non-convictions, it doesn't really matter because he came to the United States without being invited, without being inspected, and he crossed the border illegally. And so that makes him deportable for that alone.
But should he be in a prison, head shaved, shackled by his hands and feet without having had the chance to defend himself in open court to that allegation of being a gang member?
I'm also highly confident that his record in the US, what is known about him, and mostly intelligence and information holding, not in convictions, is accurate. He was a member of MS-13. What El Salvador does with him while he's there is now in their hands as a public policy matter. The relationship that we have with El Salvador is, will you take these people? And so, yeah, I'm confident that he's in the right place at the right time.
Ron, when Donald Trump withdrew your nomination to be the full time ICE director, he said, and this is a quote from him, that they were going in a tougher direction. What do you understand that he meant by that? And what was your experience like working for Donald Trump in that role?
Well, I'm eager to work for the president and the administration now as I was then. It's also very evident that Donald Trump believes in a secure border and safe streets in the United States. And so I believe what the president said. He said I was a good guy, but they wanted to go in a tougher direction. We are clearly in a better place now in Trump 2.0 with regard to the tools that we're giving the front line. The numbers speak for themselves. We're down like 97% in the number of apprehensions that the Border Patrol is seeing each and every day. And so I'm on the same page as it relates to, this is important for American sovereignty. It's important for the safety of the homeland. And we've not had a better president than Donald Trump that can articulate that both to the world and to the individual workforce.
How do you think history will view, Ron, the Trump administration's actions on immigration in this first 100 days?
I think that the results that we're seeing in the very early days of Trump 2.0 over the 4-year time frame is going to make people very satisfied with the level of control and safety, both for border communities and the homeland in general. I think we're going to look back and recognize that no one has done more to protect the homeland than Donald Trump.
Are more people being deported now, though? Because Donald Trump said he'd like to deport millions of people. Has that been more of a struggle, do you think, than he anticipated?
There's a really long answer for regards to how the numbers are looked at in the past and what they look like today. This is what I can tell you. The traffic at the border has been muted by the deployments from the Department of Defense, the agency cooperation, and the frontline at DHS. So removals at the border are almost down to like 3% of what they were just a year ago. That number is going to be smaller than it's been for a long time because we had 4 years of out of control border and lots of arrests and lots of removals. And so when that number is down, then the overall number is down. What I can also tell you is that ICE in the last couple of months has made more at-large arrests of criminal aliens inside of the United States in the last several months than they had in the previous 2 years. And then there's a phenomenon. People are electing to leave the United States. People are going home without being asked when they're here in the country illegally. So people who are in the country illegally that don't want to risk the removal and deportation orders and going to court and being in custody and detention can raise their hand and get assistance with travel documents and, in fact, airline tickets to remove themselves from the United States. And on all those fronts, we're succeeding.
Is the administration pushing people to self-deport because those numbers aren't quite as high as Donald Trump would like?
No, this is just another alternative to efficiently remove people who are in the country illegally anyway. And so this
Mhm.
is an opportunity for them to do it sort of on their own terms and not risk, a 5 or a 10 year bar if they're formally deported from the United States.
I know from reporting on a lot of these cases, and to British listeners, there seems to be a kind of casual cruelty to all this. You know, the people waiting at the other side of the border with immigration appointments who are fleeing violence and persecution in their home countries, and suddenly their hopes and dreams of building a life in the United States are dashed. The people who have suddenly been deported to a jail in El Salvador without the chance to prove in an open court that they are not gang members. What would you say to, the suggestion that this is a cruel administration?
Cruel is not the word I would use. I think what we're adhering to is the rule of law. There have been no changes in immigration law that have been directed by the president. He's taking the tools that are available and giving them to the people who can act on them and make the border safe, and then doing immigration enforcement in a way that Americans haven't seen, at least in the last 4 years. What we're doing now is the pendulum is swinging back to the rule of law. And it may look like the middle to me, it may look like the far right to someone else. The fact of the matter is all of the activity, whether it be by the Secretary of State, by the leadership of Kristi Noem at the Department of Homeland Security, or the Oval Office itself, are all based in current immigration laws that are on the books. We're using those laws to protect the country, and people are not used to that because they hadn't seen it for a while.
Ron Vitiello, really appreciate you sparing some time for Trump 100.
Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
And that's day 92 of Trump 100. If you have any questions for me and the team, you can email us at trump100@sky.uk and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the week. But for now, thanks for joining me and I'll see you tomorrow for day 93.